Alright guys, this is pretty much my mess right now. Uh, we got spark coming from the coil, we can't get spark to the plugs. And I started going over it and over it. And with your Ford ignition, you've got your coil, you got your distributor, and then you got your ignition box over here. Alright. And some genius sitting behind a desk at Ford decided these plugs would be a good idea. And what happens, the reason I do not like Ford wiring, is they will deteriorate right where the wires go into the plugs. And I want to see if I could show you what's going on. Now this is the one that goes to the distributor. And if you look right here, and the wires just, it's still connected, but you can actually feel that there's so much give there. I guarantee it's broke right where my finger is inside the jacket. So what we're going to do is we're going with a GM style HEI distributor, single wire, coil on top. Yeah, I mean, the purists out there are going to bitch and whine, you know, well, it's not Ford, you know. It's a GM style distributor made for a Ford. Okay. And what it does is it gets rid of a majority of this wiring right here. Gets rid of this box. Gets rid of the coil, or this coil. And everything is right here. The only wires that we'll really have going to the motor, and I know I'm going to miss something, but we have our oil sensor plug, we have our temperature sensor plug, we have our alternator wires, and the wires that go to the, this thing, air conditioning compressor. That's and the electronic choke. So, and the hot wire from the coil. Everything else that runs across the front of this motor, mostly everything else that runs across the front of this motor, will become obsolete. So it'll clean up the engine compartment. I don't have to worry about any of these going bad. You get stuck on the side of the road and one of these are broken inside, you're having your vehicle towed. There's no way you're going to fix that on the side of the road. I don't care how good you are. Unless you have an extra box in your glove box. And, you know, that's not saying it's going to be on this side. It could be on this side, which is part of the wiring harness. Then you're really SOL. And then you're cutting out plugs and splicing wires. And it's just a nightmare. It was a bad design to begin with. Now, when it's fully functional and everything's good, it's a good ignition system. There's nothing wrong with it. But as they get older and this stuff starts to deteriorate, I mean, this is an 86, you know. And, I mean, you could replace the box, but like I said, you know, you've got the other half of the wiring harness, and that goes bad too. So we're going to try to alleviate most of that and just make it more reliable is what I'm looking at. Cleaner look, more reliable. So we're going to start. We already got the battery disconnected. We're going to remove the coil. I'm going to mark the plugs. We're going to remove the plugs or the wires, spark plug wires. And then I'm going to have to take this jacket back off of the wiring harness and start following all these wires to start alleviating them. And we'll get rid of some of that and we'll pull the box. Now, real quick, the GM style HEI distributor is taller than the stock distributor. So as I started looking at this, there is a good possibility that my air cleaner is not going to clear the coil that sits on top of this. So we might have to put a carb spacer in. We might have to go with a smaller air cleaner. I'm not 100% sure yet. We will find out shortly. But if you guys are thinking about doing that, keep that in mind, because like I said, I'm not 100% sure at that point. We will learn as we go and see what's happening. Now I've seen it both ways, and quite honestly, I'm guessing I'm going to need a carb spacer, which I got one on the shelf. It's no big deal, but please keep that in mind when you're considering putting the HEI style distributor into your small block Ford, because you might have to change more than what you think you need to change. But we'll find out in a bit. Yep, found one of the reasons I didn't have spark. Goes to the distributor. You can tell it's broke right here. It was broke here completely. Here's the other part of the wire down over here. And you can see that they are not in any way in good shape. You can see that one's broke too. So I feel a little better about doing this. So we'll get at it and get this thing off, and before I pull anything, I'll start the camera back up, show you what's going on. Well, I got the wires out for the ignition, and this is what you'll be taking out. You got your leads for your coil. You got your plug that goes to the distributor. You got your two plugs that go to the brain box, and it's all connected. And then you have two leads that actually run over to this mess, which I'm getting ready to show you. This was all just taped up, and quite honestly, I should have checked it when I first got the truck, and I didn't. But now I know I got to go through the whole wiring harness. It's, you know, they've got some connectors on some. They didn't heat shrink anything. Some of it was just taped. Don't ask. I don't know. More here. And you can see a couple more down in there. And quite honestly, if they didn't cut and splice it here, they did it over there. So I'm going to go through and try to make one functional wiring harness out of this mess. Alright guys, distributor's in, and I want to show you several issues that we're dealing with on what is turning out to be a bad idea, at least with this intake. It's an aftermarket intake, and yeah, it's been a nightmare pretty much. I mean, just little things all the way around. So there's still a lot of stuff we got to do to the motor. I've got to clean it up, reroute some of the wiring and the hoses, and I just want a cleaner look. And there's a couple things that, I mean, I bypassed I put a fitting in here because there's usually a bypass that goes from your heater hose up to this fitting, which was actually this one here, and we had to change it out. So I took the bypass out and I just stuck I had this in the shop. So, I mean, before I put this on the road, I'll run a one-piece line, and we still got to wrap the wiring harness after we get the wires all routed, and put a shield on it and little stuff like that. So, I mean, there's still a lot that we have to do to the motor. Several issues. First one, like I said, you cannot use the stock piece. And we've got these brass fittings here going into the stock tube here. And does it work? Yes. Is it going to stay that way? Nah, I got to find something else. I'm thinking maybe an Earl's fitting or something. I've been looking online trying to find something that is small down here and maybe a single tube that curves into a 90 and then has another fitting on the other end. And I'm sure Earl's has something out there. I just got to find it. Distributor itself, got it off Amazon. It was about 60 bucks, give or take. 52 plus shipping, something like that. Distributor itself looks like it's decent quality. Is it going to last forever? No, probably not, man. But I mean, 60 bucks compared to, oh, I'm guessing probably about 10 times more for like an MSD setup. Which, if it wasn't a budget truck and I wasn't building it as a budget truck, yeah, I'd probably go with an MSD or a more expensive ignition system. But this is a budget build, and I'm trying to stay as cheap as possible. And this was the best choice for that, or at least I think, or thought. With the one wire setup, you get rid of the ignition box, and you can see on my ignition box, you can see how the wires are starting to, that's what they start doing. And then before you know it, they start corroding and deteriorating, and it just shorts out. And if you look at the distributor, I'll take you across my mess here. You can see what happened with all this. You know, it's breaking apart, and they're broke down here, I mean, or barely hanging on. And you could tell, I mean, before I got the truck, somebody taped them up trying to save them, I guess, and I mean, as you can see, it didn't work. But here's your problem. The GM HEI distributor is taller, and it's probably about 3/8 to 7/16, maybe even a ½ inch wider than your stock distributor. So you're running into all kinds of clearance issues. I'm guessing especially with an aftermarket intake. I didn't try it on a stock intake, and quite honestly, I should have before I installed it, just for the video purposes. Another issue, even with the spacer, you can see it ain't gonna work. So I either got to find a top spacer, I got to find this about a ½ inch taller, or I'm gonna have to put a carb spacer underneath it to bring the carb up. And I don't think being the main word right now, I don't think that if I put a carb spacer in, I'll have any issues as far as the linkage and stuff. I'm hoping not. So, I mean, before I put a carb spacer in, I'm going to see if I can get a thicker top spacer and just raise it up a little bit. But that's probably the simplest problem to solve on this. With this fitting being so close, and your one intake runner on the manifold is the wires that come out for the coil on the side. The little grommet is like right there. But actually that's okay, because with this fitting you can't turn it past your thing right here anyway. So we definitely have clearance issues. I don't feel I have enough turn on the distributor to time it. I mean, with the way it is, I might get lucky. I doubt it, because I don't get lucky. But that's where we're at right now, and we're gonna try to button this up and figure out some of the issues with this. They hacked This was originally a EFI engine, so it had the 2 fuel pumps in each, fuel pump in each one of the fuel tanks, and then it had the booster pump, or the electronic fuel pump on the rail. And I'm getting fuel up to the carb. I've got to check the PSI, but before I got the truck, whoever switched it over to carburetor just jury-rigged the crap out of the fuel lines, and we got to straighten that out. We've got a small leak underneath there we've got to take care of. It's got to be right, or it's not leaving the garage. And then somewhere, which I'm guessing is the lower radiator hose, I don't know if you can see that. You can see that little water spot down on the ground there. And I think it's riding the cross member from the lower radiator hose. So we got to take care of that and button that up, make sure we're tight on the fluids. And then hopefully this evening, I'm hoping this evening, we'll see if we can't get this thing to fire up. But that's what's on the plate for today, and that's how far we've gotten so far. We've got all the old wiring for the electronic ignition, except for the box. I haven't removed the box yet, but I removed all the wiring. We still got to run a hot from the coil for the distributor, and we'll run that in with the wiring harness and keep it as clean as we can. Fords, even the older Fords, they're the hardest to get a nice, clean, good-looking engine compartment, especially with the air conditioning. Surprisingly, the air conditioning works, so I'm not going to delete it. And if I didn't have the air conditioning on here and all the compressor hoses and stuff like that, it would look a little better in my opinion. But we'll just dress it up and clean it up the best we can. And like I said, this is a budget build. We're trying to keep it down, and once it's done, we'll do a video and I'll sit down and I'll break everything down for you guys. And a lot of it was wheeling and dealing, but there's no reason you guys can't wheel and deal too, man. I don't have any, special skills or anything wheeling and dealing, except for the fact that I've probably done it all my life. And that's how I fund everything in this garage. I don't take money from my house or my business. I wheel and deal, and I'll save up. I'll trade for something I've got that I don't need. I'll hit auctions. I'll hit garage sales, and we're going to do a video on that too. And I'll explain how I do some of my wheeling and dealing, so you can do some wheeling and dealing too. But I'm gonna turn the camera off and get to work, and we'll see you soon. Alright guys, we got it pretty much buttoned up. Got the distributor in. We got a extension plate, a Mr. Gasket air cleaner spacer, and we had to go 1.5 inches up, and it is maybe a 1/16 of an inch off of the number 1 spark plug. I might double it up and go 2 inches. I got to see what I had to play with to go with a shorter profile air cleaner. We're going to have to play with it, but right now it's not sitting on top of it. It's real close. I've still got wiring to do. I've got this kind of jury rigged to a hot I had over the old hot for the fuel pump, but we'll get all that straightened up. But we're going to see if she's going to start and how she does. You ready?
Yep, ready when you are.
Well, we got it for the most part. Still needs to be tuned. We need to tweak it. And it's still running kind of rough. We got to adjust the carburetor. And we'll mess with that. But we know we've gotten to the point where you turn the key and it starts. So that's where I want it to get. And I'll continue to mess with this and, you know, straighten up the wiring and tune it. But I've got to run the fuel line better and put some brackets in and stuff like that. But as of right now, it runs, and that's the main thing. So now we can get started on the interior and the body work and the other stuff we need to do, and I can play with this in between. But that's about it. I mean, it's an easier setup. It's got less wiring, but it's a monster to put in, man, with an aftermarket intake. I don't know if it's going to be any easier if you have a stock intake. That's something I can't answer right now. Like I said, I'm going to come across a stock intake if I don't have one laying around, and I'll actually pull the damn distributor and see how the clearance is on that. And that way we know, and I'll update the video when I get a chance to do that. But I've got to straighten out all the wiring, like I said, and still have a lot of work to do, but it's inching along, and as long as it's inching along forward, it's okay with me. Alright guys, I appreciate it. Please, once again, like, share, subscribe if you like the content and you want to follow the projects, and we hope to see you soon. Thank you.